All right, this week we're talking about Egyptian god symbols and the brain. If you're confused about that, don't worry. So is Megan.
It's an interesting combination.
It is. It sounds insane, right? It sounds nuts. What would those possibly have to do with each other? You know? But I'm going to show you. Well, I can't show you. That's the hard part about this episode. And honestly, the next few, because I can't show you in the podcast how these symbols represent different parts of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
But they do. And just check the blog, wisdomandrum.com, or you can check our Tumblr, tumblr.com/wisdomandrum. And, you know, the normal stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. All of them. They'll all have it.
I'm sorry, everyone can tell who does all the work here.
Yes, I do.
It's not me.
Yes, I do.
We have a Tumblr?
Yes, we have a Tumblr. Yeah, if you check any of those, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of the symbols for Egyptian gods, you know, like you have the Eye of Horus. That's actually the first one we're going to talk about. It's part of your brain. It literally looks... This is something you have to understand. I'm actually glad I thought of this now. I can explain it now. But the ancient Egyptians, when they came up with these symbols, they had to do it in a way that it represented what they wanted it to represent as closely as possible, right? So what they did was, you know, the Eye of Horus, they drew it as close to how that part of the brain looks as they could, while still squeezing other meanings into it. You know what I'm saying? So if you put it up there, it's not a 100% perfect fit, but it's pretty damn close. You know, I'd say probably like 95%. But the reason they did that is because there's other hidden meanings in it. And I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But like the Eye of Horus specifically, there's math equations and shit in the Eye of Horus that explain the 5 senses that humans have. Yeah. Yes. I don't make this shit up.
That's crazy.
So before we jump into that though, I just want to say we're getting into some shit now that it's gonna take me a long time to like piece all of this together. So probably most of the rest of this season is gonna be we're gonna be jumping back and forth between like different mythologies and the Bible and stuff like that, and I'm gonna start tying a lot of shit together that no one ever knew you could tie together. You know? And I'm gonna talk more about that at the end because I'm only gonna cover 3 of the Egyptian gods. Yeah, their entire mythos. We're going to talk for 45 minutes about 3 of them. Because that's how expansive this topic is. Okay? So, definitely listen to the next episodes because it's about to get real. Yeah, we're going to talk about 3 of them. And then we're technically 4 of them, but one of them we're only going to briefly touch on because it's going to bring up other topics that we don't have time to cover in this episode. We're going to talk about it at the end. But it's kind of gonna give you a hint of where we're going with this next week. Okay? So the first one, the Eye of Horus. Now, it's important to note, Egyptian gods, the gods of any mythology, they're always associated with certain things, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, what's a good one?
Well, I mean, I know a lot about, like, Greek and Roman mythology just because of, you know, astrology, so...
Okay, give us an example.
Mercury.
Mercury.
The planets are named after Greek mythology.
What does that have to do with what I'm talking about?
I'm giving you an example. Mercury. So that represents communication, commerce. The god in Greek mythology
the god
represents
Mercury.
Those things, yeah.
Okay.
I was just explaining why I know that, because, like, I don't know how...
Yeah, so you confused me. I thought you were running off on an astrology thing.
No.
We've been recording for 2 minutes.
No.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. That's my point. Like, Mercury was the god of communication.
Yeah, and
stuff.
Like commerce, travel, like, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. That's exactly what I meant. So, like, Horus, his things that were attributed to him were healing, protection, rejuvenation, rebirth, resurrection, and wholeness. Now, you have to keep these things in mind when we're explaining this, because essentially what I'm trying to show everyone is these gods didn't actually exist, and this wasn't just a fable, okay? it is fiction in a sense, but it's more like if you think of like the book Animal Farm, how if that was George Orwell, right? Was it Orson Welles? That was George Orwell.
I do not
I'm pretty
know.
sure it was George Orwell. I don't know. It's been a long time since I read it.
I don't have my phone to backtrack.
But at one point in time, it was very unsafe to openly, point out the flaws of the current government and stuff like that. So they did it metaphorically, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, if you know, you know. So that's kind of how this is. This is what people don't understand. Like, anything in this world that's worth doing is going to be hard. And usually, unless you're just doing some silly shit, some silly unnecessary shit, the harder it is, the more worth it is. Well, I mean, I've seen some grown men do some really dumb, silly, unnecessary shit.
Yeah.
That, it could have been easy if they did it the right way and they made it hard. And that's what I mean. If you're doing that, what you're doing probably isn't worth it. But if you're doing things the right way, the harder it is, probably the more worth it is to do it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing. Early on, like real spirituality, people who really wanted to like crack the code and figure out what existence was actually about and shit, it wasn't an easy thing to do. Because if it was, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah.
See, I'm giving you guys a cheat sheet right now. They didn't have this 20,000 years ago. All they had was, the Egyptian mythology. And if you knew how to crack the code, you were well on your way, Still a ton of work to do after that. But you got to crack that code first, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of this season, at least, and probably much further on. We're going to crack that code. Okay, and it all starts with symbols. So you got the Eye of Horus, and this was his thing: healing, protection, rejuvenation, rebirth, resurrection, and wholeness. All right, now you got to remember that for later.
Okay.
We're not going to fully get into Horus's mythology right now. We are in a future episode, but you need to remember that I said that because we're going to get into one that you're going to need to remember that. All right, now as a symbol, the eye contains 6 different parts. Jesus. 6 parts. And they were all given different like numerical values. Okay, this is what I was talking about. With a numerator of 1 and denominators to the power of 2. Alright, and the whole point is they're linked to the 5 senses.
I didn't know you were going to make me do math today.
No, you don't have to do math. I'm going to do it for you.
Right,
you just got to follow along. Alright, so now I'm going to post this picture so you can actually see this done. Because me saying it is only going to give you a small idea. Right? Seeing the picture, it's going to fully make sense. So make sure you check our, stuff, like I said. The right side of the eye is 1/2. That's your sense of smell. The pupil is 1/4. That's your sight. The eyebrow is 1/8. That's your thought. Okay. The left side of the eye is 1/16. That's your hearing. The curved tail is 1/32. That's your taste. The teardrop is 1/64. That's touch. Okay. Now, if you add all of those up, that's 63/64, and it's believed that the missing part is said to represent the magical power of Thoth, because you're not born with that, but you can develop it.
So is that like third eye type deal?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the picture that I'm gonna post online on the website and stuff, it's basically that whole part of the brain. We're gonna get into it in a minute. I'm gonna break down the different parts of the brain that this makes up, but it's everything surrounding your third eye, basically. And now maybe that's the magical power of Thoth. The third eye, the pineal gland, that it isn't part of this drawing. You know what I'm saying? And we're actually gonna talk about that a lot, because there's a few of them. It's almost like the pineal gland and the pituitary gland are centers for all of the different symbols. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And if you look at the pictures that I'm going to post, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna briefly like go over what this part of the brain is exactly, what it controls in the human body, stuff like that. Okay, so this part of the brain it's linked to emotion and memories. Okay, not only that, it also is like your motor function. It controls and coordinates everything, all of your movements, your heart rate, everything. Okay, so that's pretty important, right? Not only does it control all of your five senses, it also dictates your motor skills, your heart rate, probably your breathing. That's one thing I'd have to check into because I didn't come across that anywhere. But yeah, possibly even your breathing, you know.
It's all the stuff that if a zombie apocalypse happens that we're not going to have anymore. Like that part of our brain would shut down if you turn into a zombie.
Yeah, possibly, but I mean, that's for somebody else's show, not mine.
Sorry.
You and I have very different beliefs on what a zombie is. Because the whole point of me doing this show is I'm trying to unzombify some people. Alright, so, yeah, it is. It's raining, and it's picking it up. There's nothing I can do about that. Maybe it'll create a nice, relaxing atmosphere while I destroy what you thought was reality. Okay, so the Eye of Horus, the way that they looked at it, it was a secret area of the brain, right? Because it's hidden. If you look at the pictures of it, you know, when everybody thinks of a brain, they think of the gray matter, which is basically the very outside of the brain and stuff. Nobody really thinks of like all the little fine details that's hidden under that. This is one of those fine details that's hidden under the gray matter, you know. So the fact that, you know, in ancient Egypt or Kemet, that's what Egypt was called at the time, you know, before all those stupid white people showed up. Just the fact that they knew about this so long ago is insane. You know, because anybody who's done any kind of like looking into ancient Egypt knows about the hooks, right? They had these hooks that supposedly, which isn't the full truth, was supposedly like when someone died, they would use them, they'd stick them up their nose and remove their brains apart at a time with them. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that story. Mm-hmm. But that's not actually how it was. How could they possibly have all of this deep knowledge of the brain if that's really how they were removing brains? Anyways, we'll get into that eventually, but right now, what they believed was it was like a secret area of the brain. And it held the potential for human beings to attain enlightenment by nurturing this particular, it's the limbic system of the brain. By nurturing the limbic system of the brain, you were basically putting yourself in a position where you could start to attain enlightenment, okay? And we're going to explain why that's kind of just like the jump start for it, all right? Yeah, and part of the reason that they thought that was because, you know, it surrounded the pineal gland, which basically, according to most, I guess I don't know what the word is, but, you know, not Christianity, but like pretty much everyone else, they've looked at the pineal gland as like the throne of God, basically, which we're going to get into next week. But it's like the house of the soul. You ever hear the old saying, your body is a temple? Mm-hmm. Well, your pineal gland is the altar. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's basically the house of God.
Yeah.
Okay, so their thought was that, their belief was that all this stays dormant until the soul reaches a certain spiritual level. Okay? Once they reach a certain spiritual level, they start to realize, you know, there's got to be significantly more to our existence, to our world. And the first thing they do is they start nurturing that limbic system, whether they realize it or not. They start nurturing that. And I'm going to explain how in a minute. But that's what they do. They start nurturing that system. And by nurturing that system, over time it slowly opens the third eye. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So, they believe that understanding the limbic system as a whole will heal or reshape your brain. Which again is what I just said. It's like priming you to like have that spiritual awakening, you know?
Yeah.
Alright, so now we're going to get into the actual parts of the brain that this makes up. You know, that this symbol like represents.
Okay.
Okay, the first like big one is your hypothalamus. that controls your emotions, right? Humans are very emotional creatures. 9 times out of 10, when we do something, it's out of emotion. You know, you help someone because you love them. You hurt someone because you don't, you know, or because they hurt you, you know. You push away perfectly good people because you're sad, you know. Like, it's kind of a big deal, right? Like, then you got the hippocampus. You have the hippocampus, which relates to your memories, and it also helps you to understand your environment, which is kind of a strange combination of things, right? For one part of the brain to do. But again, we're going to get into that. All right, and then you have the amygdala, which is kind of the amygdala and the hippocampus kind of run hand in hand. Okay, because the hippocampus controls your memories and helps you understand your environment, right? The amygdala coordinates responses in your brain to things in your environment that trigger an emotional response. So really all 3 of these things kind of go hand in hand. The hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and the amygdala, they all kind of work in unison.
My amygdala is definitely broken. Anyway.
Noted. All right, now this is kind of irrelevant to really like what we're talking about, but I thought I would throw it in here anyways. Damage to this system usually stems from like trauma or witnessing abuse, neglect, violence, you know, and that stuff leads to depression, rage, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, like all kinds of things, right? If you ever wondered where that shit's coming from, that's the part of the brain it's coming from. Okay, and now ancient Egypt or Kemet, they believe that relaxing the limbic system could like heal it and reshape your brain, you know? If you could find ways naturally to get rid of that stress, get rid of that anxiety, the depression, whatever, you know, you could reshape your brain in a way that not only did you have to feel that way anymore, it also primes you for that moment where that third eye opens and you have that awakening, you know. The next couple are kind of brief, but we're going to get back to them, you know, eventually this season. I'm just going to point them out a little bit, okay? The first one is Amun Ra, okay? Now I have to explain that at some point in Egyptian mythology, 2 gods became 1 god. And I'm still trying to like pinpoint it and figure out, was this like part of the mythology that they became 1 god? Or was it like a worship thing? You know what I'm saying? Where the people worshiping the gods of Egypt combined the 2, either intentionally or mistakenly. I'm not really sure. But either way, it's still the same because he became Amun Ra, which is obviously the god Amun and the god Ra. But regardless, the symbol would remain the same because I believe it came from Amun, this symbol. All right. And as soon as I figure out where this happened, where they merged into one thing, I will, you know, inform people of that one way or another. Amun Ra was always depicted as having these ram's horns. You know, he was like a man, you know, very glorious looking man, full head of hair, mighty beard, much like myself, maybe 20 years ago. But he had horns, like Princess Leia type shit on the side of his head. They were ram's horns. Okay? Those, and again, I'm going to post pictures if you want to see it. Those basically represented the hippocampus and the brain. Okay? And that's, we touched on it a little bit. We're going to go a little bit deeper. Okay? Now, the hippocampus is kind of embedded in the temporal lobe of each cerebral cortex. See, that's the thing. It's like a ram's horn. Imagine a left and a right. One goes into one cortex and one goes into the other. Okay? So in a way, it kind of connects the 2. All right? It's part of the limbic system, obviously, like we just said. It regulates motivation, emotion, learning, and memory. Okay?
Oh, my hippocampus is broken too.
Jesus. Jesus Christ. Anyways, so we're going to, again, we're only touching briefly on that one because we're going to come back to it in another episode. But, okay, the next one is Osiris. This one's really interesting because, you know, I look at these pictures and compare them, right? The parts of the brain with the symbol, and they're always pretty damn close, right? I think This one is like the closest one to 100%. How could you even deny that that's what this is? Okay? It's Osiris. This is really important because within the next episode or two, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to proceed from here, but within the next 2 episodes, we're going to talk about a completely different mythos that explains this exact same thing in detail, the exact same way. Okay? And it's really important. Osiris was the god of death, resurrection, and fertility. Now, let's break this down. Death, resurrection, and fertility, that's rebirth. He was the god of rebirth. Okay? That's the best way to put it. To die and be resurrected, or as Christians would say, born again, that's where the fertility part comes in. He was the god of rebirth. Okay?
Okay.
That's important. Okay? Now, in the sagittal view, yes, like a Sagittarius, many
Say that because it wasn't spelled the same.
The sagittal view of the brain is basically, if you're looking at it from the bottom, somewhat from the bottom. It's hard to explain. You'd have to see the pictures on our website, wisdomandrum.com. So, this is the important part of it, okay? The sagittal view of the brain, it contains the brainstem and the 12 cranial nerves, okay?
12?
Okay, there's 12 cranial nerves, right? But they come in pairs, so there's actually 24 of them, technically, right? Each nerve has 2 parts, so there's technically 24 nerves. All right, and they're located at the bottom portion of the brain. They're distributed into 4 different main parts: diencephalon, midbrain, pons, and medulla. All right, and again, I know this sounds stupid, but that's where we're leaving this. That's where we're leaving Osiris for now. Please, if you're listening to this and it's making sense to you at all and you're enjoying this, please make sure next Monday, 5 o'clock, you get our next episode, because I'm going to go into much more detail about this stuff and it's really going to start to make sense. All right?
Take notes.
Well, just to give you a hint, in the Bible, in Revelations, when they talk about approaching the throne of God, they talk about how the throne of God is surrounded by 24... There's different versions of the Bible, all right? So some of them describe it as 24 kings that surround the throne of God. Or 24... What was the other... One of the newer versions of the Bible? I forget. I can't remember. But they're talking about the cranial nerves. The throne of God is your... I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time remembering if it's the pituitary gland or the pineal gland, but it's one of them. I'll correct that in the next episode. I mean, what?
I always thought pituitary was a funny word. That's
okay.
My contribution. I don't know.
In case you guys needed Megan's 2 cents.
I don't know about the Bible, and I don't know about brains, okay? So, that's where I stand.
All right, now this next one we're going to talk about, we're actually going to finish up this episode with this one. It's not part of your brain, okay? It's something much different, but it's very relevant to what we're talking about. And again, we're going to get deeper into it the further this season goes on. Unfortunately, the way that this stuff is, I have no choice but to bounce back and forth. It's going to be like American Horror Story at some point. This is all going to tie together.
This is a whole ass fucking Quentin Tarantino movie right here.
I know, right? It really is. It's like Reservoir Dogs for smart people. Yeah, that's really... So, let's talk about Atum.
That fucking guy.
He wasn't a guy, he was a god. He was the first Egyptian god. Now, this is
Oh, wow.
really crazy, okay? So, the way that Egyptian mythology started was very similar to a lot of different mythologies all over the world, okay? It starts by saying that in the beginning, it was just an infinite river, right? They're talking about energy, right? Just darkness and energy and space, okay? And then from that energy, this mound formed, okay? And from that mound, Atum was born, the Egyptian god Atum.
I think real quick, I just think we should clarify the spelling.
Oh, the spell.
Because it seems relevant.
Yeah. No, it is. Atum. That's the Egyptian. Yeah, it's not like Adam from the Bible. It is, but it's not. It's Atum. Okay, so I'm saying it Adam, but honestly, the way that they spoke it was probably more like Atum or something.
Yeah.
Because, like the one we were talking about, Amun. Why I say it like that? It's Amun.
We're at the part where the rum kicks in.
Yeah.
Except it's whiskey.
Whiskey tonight. But yeah, so this infinite river, right? And then from this river, this mound forms. And then from that, Adam is born. And Adam has both male and female traits embedded in him. So from there, he basically starts creating male and females. Asexually, basically. There's a very dirty M word for it, but I'm not going to get into it. Supposedly, in the original myth, he created them by masturbation. And then he spit them out of his mouth. I don't know that that's actually, what they were going for when they carved this into a stone. But that's the way that Egyptologists deciphered it. Okay?
All right, then.
Yeah. Yep.
Sounds like a...
Man seed and saliva created the whole race. So... Stop laughing.
Alright, sorry. I literally snorted.
So from that, he created a male and a female, and then another male and a female, and then they all had males and females. Okay, and we're going to get into that within the next few episodes too. But I just wanted to point out, use this as an opportunity to point out, if you pay attention and you read both side by side, it's the exact same creation myth as the Bible. And Norse mythology, and Greek mythology, and every other mythology, and sacred geometry. Just told in a different way. And for now, because we're going to get into the other mythologies and stuff here within the next few episodes, or seasons, or decades, I'm not even sure how long it's going to take to explain all of this. But for tonight, we're going to use sacred geometry. Okay, with sacred geometry, you start with a circle, right? That's the foundation of everything. It's the void space, right? An infinite river of energy. And then you find the exact dead center of this. And because this energy is chaotic and it's flowing in every possible direction, you find the dead center of it and you place a dot there. Because of this energy colliding, it creates this mound, right? And then from that mound, you have Atom. Atom, right?
Yeah,
and that's where in sacred geometry, that's where the Vesica Pisces forms. It literally translates to fish egg. It's two circles interlocked. I'm going to show pictures of this on the website too. And then from that, he had two more, and then two more, and then they all had children. So yeah, and again, we're going to go further into that here real soon within the next few episodes. I'll break down the entire first series of sacred geometry, the first 7 circles, which correlate with the creation myth of every creation myth. Even the Bible, if you break it down, on this day God created water. Well, that's what that circle of sacred geometry means. The element of water. And then the next day he created earth. And that's what that circle means. It's the element of earth. And we're going to go, okay, little teaser. So, we were talking about the cranial nerves. And how they're split into 4 different segments. Those are the 4 elements. They represent the 4 different elements. And in Revelations, when it's talking about, the apocalypse, which if you go with the original Greek translations, means literally the same thing the word revelations means. Something will be revealed to you personally. I believe it was the second, it might have been the first, it might have been the second, I can't remember. One of the seals was broken. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were all given control over 25% of the world each. The 4 elements, earth, fire, water, air. It all correlates, and we're going to tie it all together throughout the next season, maybe even 2. I honestly don't know how long it's going to take, because we have Egyptian mythology, we have Norse mythology, Greek, Roman. We have all these different mythologies. You could even go back to like Indian mythologies. Like, I believe it was the Inuit. Is that how you say it? Indian tribe. I believe it was them. Their creation myth was that the whole world was just covered in water, and then out of this water, the shell of a turtle emerged. Well, there's your infinite water, and there's your mound. And then from there, something was born onto this turtle, and it created the whole world. It created the whole universe. Every mythology is the same. Every single mythology from the beginning of time has been trying to explain the actual nature of our existence to us, and we're far, far too stupid to understand it as a species, as a whole, currently. The Egyptians... this is like 14,500 BC, this information that I'm presenting right now. The Eye of Horus, the horns of Amun Ra, Atum, all of it almost 20,000 years ago. This information was available, and very few people knew how to decipher it the right way. But if you decipher it the right way, you can actually crack the code, like we were talking about, to the actual nature of our existence. Because 9-to-5 jobs and plaster houses are not the actual nature of our existence. So I hope I summed that up enough that anyone listening fucking understands where we're going from here on. But that, honestly, in the beginning, that was the whole point of this podcast, and I feel like the first season we kind of strayed from that.
Yeah, we kind of got real goofy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing either. We were just we kind of jumped in. But from here on, this is where we're going. Some real wisdom. And a whole lot of rum.
The ratios are way off, I'm just saying.
Speak for yourself. I got this shit down to a science. But alright, so I think I covered just about everything I wanted to cover for today. So, I mean, next week's going to be a good one, for sure. I'm going to cover... I think actually next week we might cover the biblical version of Osiris.
Who's that? Can we,
Jesus.
Oh. That guy. He seems cool.
Listen, this is the thing you have to understand. This is what I meant about the meanings. I'm actually glad you asked that. This is what I meant about the meanings. Death, resurrection, fertility. Okay. That's rebirth. Okay? What was the story of Jesus? Jesus was born, right? And then they killed him. And then he was resurrected. He was reborn. Okay? And that whole story is a metaphor. It's trying to teach you something about your existence, about yourself. Okay? These are not historic events. Some of the stuff in the Bible actually was historical. Okay? Because it was necessary. And we're going to get into that too. Most of the Bible was a metaphor about your physical experience, your nature on this planet.
It's like the opposite of the handbook for the recently deceased.
We're not talking about
handbook for the
recently
diseased. Trying to get through this fucking life.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, that was a very labored explanation, but yeah, I got it.
Alright.
So, I'm not done yet. See, I wasn't going to do this right now, but I guess I might as well. I'm going to, not in detail, because we are going to cover it in the next episode, but basically Osiris was murdered and born again in a very similar... I guess in the methodology of the murder wasn't the same at all. But he was born again in a similar fashion to Jesus. And it just so happens that Jesus on the cross represents the exact same part of your brain that Osiris does. The brainstem. You ever see pictures of, and again this is going to be on the website, you ever see pictures of Egyptian gods, how they have the big, almost like horns coming out of their head? And then they have this bright orange golden ball resting inside of it.
I don't know that I've ever. I mean,
I can show you. I think people listening have probably seen it. I can show you a picture when we're done here in a minute. But
alright.
Yeah, that was the brainstem. That orange globe at the top of that is their pituitary gland. It was, and that's the funny thing. I forgot to mention the name Ra means sun in the ancient Kemetic language. Okay? Amun means hidden in the ancient Kemetic language. Therefore, now you have Amun Ra, who's depicted with this globe over his head, this bright orange globe over his head.
Okay.
You know, it's the hidden sun. This is the whole as above, so below thing that everyone's been saying from the beginning of time. You know, we live on the earth and the earth has a sun, right? Now, don't think that any part of you wasn't created in the same fashion as the universe. If you look at an atom, it's a small globe with all of these other globes revolving around it, like the solar system. If you look at a picture of an atom, it's a globe with a bunch of other smaller, like their electrons, revolving around the atom, the same way our solar system works. And in that universe that exists inside of you, the pituitary gland is the sun.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah. It's what the Buddhists refer to as microcosms and macrocosms. Supposedly a very adept Buddhist, can meditate to the point where they can see macrocosms and microcosms. And that's what they mean. They can physically see these things during meditation. They can see the inner workings of your body. And the universe truly is infinite. The smaller you get, the more you realize there's much smaller shit going on in here. And the bigger you look at the universe, the more you realize there's much bigger shit going on here. You know, when I was a kid, I knew there was 9 planets at the time.
Sorry, Pluto.
Yeah, sorry, buddy. There were 9 planets. There was a sun. There was a moon. I knew some of those planets had moons. And now I'm an adult, and I'm like, there are billions and billions and billions of star systems out there. Not stars, star systems. And how do we know that there's not billions and billions or, trillions? Googillions. That's a word. Look it up. More beyond that.
Is that why Google got its name?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Look it up. I don't make this shit up.
Sorry, I derailed.
It's okay. But anyways, so the next episode we're going to talk about the story of the resurrection. What it actually means, I'm going to show you examples of the same exact story told in a different way from other mythologies as well. So that I can show you that it literally is all of the same. It's all the same. Everyone has been trying to tell you the same thing from the beginning of time, and we just don't realize it. You got anything before we go?
I'm excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm like virgin on prom night excited.
Oh my god. Alright. Laters.